You are listening to The Thought Leaders Show with the world's cutting-edge, hottest innovators, influencers, and impact makers today. If you are looking for inspiration and motivation, listen in. Welcome to The Thought Leaders Show. Now, here's your host.
Hi, everyone. This is Tammy Patzer, and I'm really excited to introduce today's guests, Jill and David Stowell. Beginning with a single struggling student in 1984, former school teachers David and Jill began a work which now has them running two companies, a learning center that transforms the lives of bright but struggling students, and a training company that licenses their proprietary systems to business owners who want to make a big impact on their local communities. Jill developed the clinical systems that dramatically improve or completely correct learning and attention challenges, including dyslexia. And David is the business guy who helps all the licensees build a profitable, heart-centered business using their proven procedures. Together, they're out to change the lives of students and their families across the country. David holds a Bachelor of Arts degree from Pepperdine University, and Jill has a Bachelor of Science degree from Pepperdine and an MS from Cal State Fullerton. They live in Chino, California. They own two learning centers and together employ 35 employees and deliver 400 to 500 hours of service each and every week. They also support a national network of dozens of centers with people they've trained around the country. Right now, they're looking for more people who want to join in this really important work. They just had a national best-selling book, The Dyslexia Learning and Attention Challenges Solution, hit the top of the Amazon charts, and they're helping other people to understand exactly what a huge problem our schools and society are facing. And the idea is that they can help to correct the issues that affect more than 15 million kindergarten through 12th grade students. So, oh my God, I know I'm somebody who has this issue. I have a grandchild who has Asperger and has had different challenges with his education. Even though he's extremely smart, he's had different challenges with school. So let's get right into it and tell me more about what makes what you do so different than what's going on in our schools today.
Well, Tammy, let me start by telling you about a student because I think it will illustrate that. Derek came to us when he was 9, and he was, like your grandson, really bright, and he was just this charming, charismatic, really cool kid, but he couldn't read at all. And when you're in special education, you have an individual education plan, and you have goals on that plan. So his reading goal for the entire year was that he would learn 10 survival words. That was his reading goal. 10 words like women, men, stop, caution. And I looked at that and I thought, well, no one thinks this child is ever going to read. And of course, to his mom, that was completely unacceptable. When we worked with Derek, we found that he was severely dyslexic. And so we couldn't just do more reading with him, which is kind of what traditional tutoring in school tends to do. You have a problem, they give you more of that, more practice, individually. But we had to address the underlying skills that were causing the problem. So we had to teach his brain how to process the sounds in the words and help him visually to be able to look at the page and not feel like it was like moving all over the place. And when we were able to do that, he was able to learn to read. And so the last time I saw Derek, he had graduated from high school with honors. We worked with him when he was young, but he had gone on to get out of special education, graduated from high school with honors, and he was, at the time I saw him, a college student, a very successful theater major.
Wow. So it really takes somebody to actually work with an individual and find out more about what are the issues, because obviously in that individual education plan, nobody ever said, oh, he has dyslexia and that's why he has these issues. Is that basically what happens sometimes with these kids?
Right. When kids are struggling, what teachers see in the classroom is they see that they're not paying attention, or they can't read, or they're not getting their work done. And so they usually give them someone to try to support them to help them get their work done. But what we do is we look and say, well, if this smart child is not able to do that, there's got to be a root of that. And so we're looking at the underlying learning processing skills that are not supporting the student well enough and developing those through intensive and targeted brain training. And then we can remediate the academics or study skills, and they stick and they can become independent learners.
I think one of what Jill and you have both touched on is who's responsible for solving learning challenges. And the answer is nobody. The school's job isn't to do that, it's to teach curriculum. A speech therapist works on speech issues. The 504 plan is an accommodation plan. It says, you're going to have to live with this. We're going to make it easier for you. And if you go through typical tutoring and even the big box learning centers, typically what they're doing is just more of the same. And what we do is if a kid's skills, the school thinks that they're here, but they're actually down here. Well, the school and nobody else deals with these skills underneath. They deal with all these skills, and that's their job, in the same way that we don't teach chemistry, but we do build the skills that make learning easy.
Well, I think you said it because you said you help them work with their brain or train their brain in order to process in whatever way that their brain actually works. Is that part of what you do, is you actually are assessing how each individual's brain works so that they can then work and learn in the way that is best suited for them?
Well, kind of, but here's the thing. The skills needed for learning can be placed on a continuum. And so up at the very top of the continuum are reading, writing, spelling, math, and all those subject areas. But underneath that are whole sets of underlying skills that every brain needs in order to learn. And those are things like auditory processing, visual processing, memory, attention, and there are a lot of skills there. And so if any of those skills are weak or inefficient, it's really hard to work up there at the top. It's kind of like if you think of that continuum like a ladder, well, kids at school have to work at the top of the ladder, and certainly adults in their adult life have to be working at the top of the ladder. But if any of those rungs underneath are weak or, unstable, then it just makes everything so much more difficult. It stresses your attention and your memory and just really gets in the way of you performing as independently and easily as you could be.
It sounds really good to teach kids in the way that they learn best. And I get that. The problem is the way that some of these kids, and we know from research, it's about 30% of the population. Well, the way that 30% processes information and can learn is terribly inefficient. and we can build the skills so it becomes as efficient as the other 70%. So teach them in the way that they learn best. It's a very humane, kind way to look at it. It doesn't actually solve the problem. Now, I often say that when a kid's at school with a learning challenge, it's like a kid riding a bike and they have a flat tire. They have 2 flat tires. And what the school does is they provide an adult to help steady the seat. The kid will never fall, but when school's done, there's nobody to steady the seat anymore. They're not fixing the tires. Now, there are some tutoring places that will teach you good techniques for riding a bike with flat tires. What we do is we just take the kid off the bike, fix the tires, teach them to ride again, and then there's no need for any extra help.
Wow. I like that. So is that why so many kids are failing? Is because that nobody's ever fixing those flat tires?
Yeah, I mean, really, the job of the school is to teach curriculum and all those subject areas. And so when a child struggles, they try to give them someone to support them, to help them be more comfortable, to help them get through the work. But it isn't going under and fixing the root of the problem. And so that's really what we are doing.
Okay. There's so many labels. Like, okay, so for example, the spectrum of, like, for example, my son was diagnosed with central auditory processing disorder. So they did different things in the school to try to help him. There's ADHD, there's dyslexia, learning disabilities, autism, Asperger. It's almost like every kid has something. And I mean, even me, I go, I wonder if I had this, because I didn't have any labels on me when I was a kid, but I do know when I started in school, they put me in like the slow class. And then within 6 months, they put me into the accelerated class, because obviously I must not have had certain skills when I started school. Right. So what are all these labels? I mean, what are they really good for? Are these things real?
Labels can be good and bad. Sometimes I think a label helps people working with kids, parents, to understand their child better. And when you talked about Asperger, I think that is the one that is the most helpful if it's really accurate, because kids with Asperger have a different kind of a thinking style. They just look at the world differently. And as soon as you understand that, then you can relate to them differently. So sometimes labels, I'll give you an example with dyslexic kids, because our dyslexic students are often so bright and creative, actually really a lot the way you described your grandson, so bright and creative, and they can do all these cool things. And so when they don't do their work at school, when they don't do the reading or the writing, it looks like they're not trying, like they're lazy, because you see all these talents and all this brilliance in other ways. And a lot of times, maybe they just become very chatty or whatever, so that they don't have to look stupid in front of their peers. And the reality is that they can't actually do that work, even though they have all this other, these other talents. And so if the child then is diagnosed with dyslexia, I think it helps the child and the parent and the teachers to understand this is something real. This isn't him being lazy or unmotivated or not caring. So in that sense, I think it can be helpful. And then, it can also then guide in terms of what kinds of help they need. But we don't want labels to be a crutch or to hold them back. These are smart kids. We don't want to hold them back, put a label on and say, oh, well, he's not going to be able to do that. He won't be able to go to college. He won't be able to, because of the label. So there are good and bad aspects.
Right. The labels are kind of scary because, well, again, my grandson is a really prime example because in school, certain subjects he does very, very well, but
Mm-hmm.
you take him out of school and like he's in the Civil Air Patrol as a cadet, learning how to fly airplanes, and he
Wow.
understands all of that aeronautical stuff, but I don't know that he could pass it on a written exam if he
Right,
had to read it. But if you were to talk to him and ask him the questions, he could show it to you. He can draw it. He can diagram it. He can fly a plane. So obviously there's, it's not that it isn't the intellect, but I think
Absolutely.
you're right. It is about learning how to understand someone and not labeling them in that negative way, because it's different. The
Yes.
processing is different. So as a parent, how early should you be looking for signs of any of these issues so that you can help your child as soon as possible?
Well, if parents have concerns, they should investigate that as soon as they have concerns, because I find that parents really know, especially moms, but in general, parents have a sense about their kids. And so we don't take kids at our centers younger than 4 because, we really are working with learning, and we don't want to ever confuse a learning problem with a maturity problem. But there are parents that see things that concern them as young as 18 months, 2 years old. They should start to investigate that and ask the questions, because the sooner that you can address it, the less pain that you have to go through. It's not that the brain can't be retrained at any age, because it can. We work with adults as well, but the smaller the gap that you have to close, the better. And so, I would say be proactive from the very beginning if you have any concerns.
If a parent is trying to find resources, do you have some suggestions on different resources where they can get their questions answered about, is this normal? Is this not? What should you, who should you be reaching out to?
Yeah. With very young children up through about age 3, in California, we have regional center. I don't know if that's what it's called in every state, but there is something like that. So that would be the best resource for parents to ask at that age. They certainly can go to the public schools and get some testing pretty early on.
Long before they're in school.
Right, before they're in school, to check speech and things like that. So, those public resources are there, and that would be a good place to start if they're really young. If they are in school and they're struggling, as a parent, I want my child to be the most comfortable, independent learner he can be. So I don't want to just get him support through tutoring that he's going to have for the rest of his life in order to be able to manage. I really want to correct the problems. And so, you want to look for someone who's really working with the underlying skills and the root of the problem. And that is really where our mission is, because there are so few places that are working comprehensively with these underlying skills, to the point that we have people coming from all over the world to Southern California to get this help, and certainly from all over the country. And what we want is for there to be people in their own communities doing this work, because the research on it has been around for over 30 years. So it needs to be out there.
So it's not anything new. So David, talking about that, you actually have created, I guess, a franchise system that people can create because you've been doing this since 1984 and you have a system and you've proven that you have great improvement with your different students. So what can you talk a little bit more about that system and your network that you've developed?
Sure. If I could just talk about the journey a little bit. Jill starts off with a kid and then another one and another one. About the third student, what she had didn't work. And so she went to find the people who were doing the research and had programs or techniques or protocols that would do that. And so she went out and did that, and that worked for a bunch more kids. And then all of a sudden there's another one. So it's been over a 30-year process of building a comprehensive program that will really solve, and when I say solve, either completely correct or really make a dramatic difference for those students. So it's just a shame that we became one of the best kept secrets. And so really what we want to do is we've got two pieces of this. One is, of course, solving the learning challenges. The other is, how do you make a business out of that? And we've put together, based on mostly our mistakes, a pretty comprehensive approach that lets people get up, get started, and get up to speed. They should be in what we're doing with people. They should be up and fairly profitable at about 18 months. But they can start with students as soon as they finish some initial training.
Wow, that's a year and a half. That's pretty good. So what your mission is you would like to see your methods and your training centers all over the United States, so that the people don't have to just come to Southern California.
Right.
They can go to their neighborhood. Like for example, if it was me, I live in Florida. If there was a training center or a learning center where you have trained somebody here locally, then I could just go and have my child in a local center. So if somebody is, what type of a background would somebody who would operate one of your learning centers have?
Yeah, that's a great question. There are really a variety of backgrounds, and I'll run through them. The first is teachers, especially special ed teachers, who have been dealing with this, and they know what pain teachers face in the classroom. They really can feel what it's like. And just as Jill did, Jill was sure that there was more that could be done for these kids than was being done in school. So teachers are a great place to start. But on top of that, we have a number of speech therapists, and we could even do occupational therapists who want to add it on to an existing practice. And then I believe that there are business people out there that would walk out of corporate America tomorrow and start their own business if they just had a plan for how to do it. And finally, we have a number of people who are moms, who had challenges with their own children. They got help, and then they said, wow, this is really an amazing thing. It needs to be out there. How can I do this? Now with backgrounds, I think about, well, the best person to come up with recipes in a restaurant is a chef. So if you're a chef, you don't have to hire a chef, but you got to hire some people to do some work for you. If you're not a chef, and many restaurant owners aren't, you got to hire a chef. So no matter what your background is, there is a way to oversee the business and then hire the people that you need. And we walk people through that just depending on what their needs are. And what we did is we put together, instead of a franchise, we put together something that we think is a little more flexible and costs a little less. And it is what we call an area exclusive license. So you get a geographic area. and you're licensed to do all of this work in there. And then what we do is we do initial training. We walk people through the setting up of the business if they need it. And then we do regular support in terms of email, in terms of an online forum. And we have a group phone call every week. And we do as needed, individual phone calls. So it's not, here's what's really important. We want to make a huge impact on the learning and attention challenged students in this country. And the only way to do that is to get these programs and system out there so that it can be done. So it's really important to me that we not only get people who start a business, we want that business to be successful. And we want that business to be successful for one very important reason. If it isn't, the owner quits, they close up, they're not there to help anybody.
Right.
What we're looking for is people who really want to be in this long term and want to, be there in 10 years, in 20 years, and make it profitable for them, let them really be an important resource for their community, and have a lifestyle that works for them.
Wow, that's really cool. And you actually, the book that you wrote, is it targeting or written for the parents, or is it written for the business owners, or is it a combination?
This book really lays out the problem and what's being done, and it's really designed for people who are interested in exploring the opportunity that we have to offer.
Oh, okay, great. So again, tell me a little bit more about the book. It's The Dyslexia Learning and Attention Challenge Solution: How to Build a Profitable, Heart-Centered Business that Transforms the Learning Disability Epidemic, which, again, I saw it in my own children's lives. My oldest daughter, who just turned 40, she's actually got a PhD in adult learning, but both of my sons were in the special education system, which if I had known what I know now, I would never have allowed them to be part of that, because they got lumped in with, and they were just needed, it appeared to me, they just seemed to need more time as opposed to being lumped in with kids who were angry and had discipline issues. And so now if I had it to do over again, I would have probably put them into a private school or something totally different.
A lot of times parents are really unhappy and they blame the school and make the school the villain. And I completely understand that. But from the school's point of view, what they have to do is they have to serve every single special need that any kid in the school shows up with. And let's be honest, they are not staffed for that. They don't have the budget for that. They do absolutely the best they can. And I always tell parents, whatever help the school will give you, take it.
Right. And that's what I did.
Yeah.
I wish I'd known more.
Yeah.
But what they're not going to do is they're not going to correct the underlying skills.
Right.
And that's not what's going to happen. We talk about that in the book. I happen to have a copy of it right here.
Oh, great. Well, that's a beautiful book. Again, and I'm just looking at my notes here, and you actually want to give our listeners a copy of the book. That would be really cool. If they wanted a copy of the book, how could they get it?
Go to www.fixlearningskills.com. That's F-I-X as in repair.
Okay.
Not S-I-X like the number 6. Fixlearningskills.com. And there's a thing you can order the book right there.
Okay, great. And so really the cool thing about what you're doing, obviously you have a proven system, and now you are ready for other people to join you in this network of people who can really start changing like you said, the core issue of learning disabilities. Is that a nice little nutshell?
Sure, and realize we already have some people that we've trained and are working, but I would love to see that expanded into 150 centers across the country.
Wow. So that's really, really interesting. Again, everyone, the book is called The Dyslexia Learning and Attention Challenge Solution: How to Build a Profitable, Heart-Centered Business That Transforms the Learning Disability Epidemic. And again, if somebody wants to reach out to you, what would be the best way for them to contact you?
At fixedlearningskills.com, there's also a contact button that you can click on, and we can set up a time to talk.
Okay, great. So everyone, it's really been an interesting conversation, and I learned a lot about, I guess, again, we think our schools should be able to fix everything, and I think you kind of set us straight about that. And again, you gave us some good resources and a lot of food for thought about not only as a parent how you can help your children, but also if you want to be part of the solution, how you could join in and become part of the solution to help children with learning disabilities. So I really appreciate that. And again, it is F-I-X, learningskills.com. And then you can contact Jill and David there. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me today.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. It's been fun.
Thank you. Everyone, this is Tammy Patzer. Go make it a beautiful day.
You've been listening to the Thought Leaders Show. To get all past shows and to get all future shows, go to thoughtleadersshow.com.